Hi students, and welcome to another e-lesson video. This one a complementary video to the last one over introductory paragraphs, this one over concluding paragraphs. As with all of these videos, please feel free to pause and rewind at any time to take notes, rewatch, or catch up. Here's what we're going to talk about. What a conclusion should do. And of course, we've got to talk about what a conclusion should not do. Take a look at good examples of both. And then finally, I'll leave you with some specific techniques on how you can craft an impactful conclusion. First of all, let's go ahead and compare a couple of different concluding paragraphs. First, a pretty standard looking, high school sounding, generally poor concluding paragraph. Through reading, observation of human nature, and personal experience, I believe I have come to the conclusion that incentives aren't that bad. Charities will still receive money, which can help a lot of people, and the rewards help the people who donate. If everyone donated just a little bit of their money, the world would be a better place. We all need a little help now and then, so donate today. By the way, when I raise my voice like that's what literally an exclamation point sounds like when read aloud. So don't ever use exclamation points, but we'll get to that in a minute. Here is a little more sophisticated of a concluding paragraph. What do you notice right away? It's longer, of course. Concluding paragraphs should be longer than your introductions. We'll get to that in a minute as well. But listen to how this one sounds as opposed to the previous. It's clear that offering incentives for charitable acts appeals to a part of human nature we cannot ignore. While we celebrate the thought of giving just for the sake of giving, we are more likely to give when there is something else on the table, even if that something else is as little as a cheap t-shirt or seeing our name scroll across the bottom of a television program. But if charity, true charity, is selfless and does the most good, then incentivized giving must be something else, something less. Despite its expediency, despite any amount of good our donation ultimately does, unless we decline the reward, we cannot fool ourselves into thinking that we act with the interests of others in mind, and we should not be entitled to call our giving charity. Failing to distinguish quid pro quo from altruism can inflate our perceptions of the amount of good we actually do, which in the end helps little more than our egos. Now, full disclosure, I actually had to modify this one quite a bit myself from the student's original, because in the student's original they were going really, really strong, and then they just ran out of time, as with the case with a lot of timed essays. They ran out of time and had to cut themselves short. I just kind of went in here and expanded on what it sounded like they were going to say. So full disclosure there. But this is a complete example of what a good conclusion should sound like. You know, again, don't be intimidated by the high vocabulary or the sentence structure. This is good on so many other levels than that. So let's talk about what a conclusion should do. A conclusion should always leave the reader feeling fulfilled, meaning the reader should appreciate that they just read what they had read. A good conclusion should wrap up a discussion. It should signal that the discussion is coming to an end and wrap it up nicely. It should, of course, draw conclusions. A lot of students overlook this. They mistake drawing conclusions with merely repeating what they've already said. Throughout your entire essay, you need to be building up to conclusions that you draw in your concluding paragraph. It should also push the discussion forward. You've offered this one discussion, limited in scope, limited in its framework, limited in its context. At the end of your conclusion, you should kind of push it forward to give your essay more significance than just what you discussed. And finally, you should always include some sort of profound commentary in your essay. And as I said a minute ago, your conclusion should also be longer than your intro. Don't forget that. An introduction should be relatively short. A conclusion doesn't necessarily have to be a long paragraph, but it really should be longer than your intro. And that just makes sense. Your intro is discussing things in very general terms. Your conclusion is far more specific. All right. Let's talk about what a conclusion should not do. Let me skip back ahead. I had to do some editing there. What a conclusion should not do. A conclusion should never repeat anything from your intro. I know this is a very common thing that you've done in the past, but you've really, if you think about it, just done this because it's a last resort. Because your thesis statements have been so specific, you haven't really had anything to conclude. So we're going to get away from that. No more repeating what your intro said. Going off of that, your conclusion should never just reword something from your intro either. That's the same as repeating. Your conclusion should never make vague or banal statements just like your intro, but I find more vague and banal statements in conclusions than I do in intros. It should never make absolute statements that aren't true. The conclusion, for whatever reason, is just this very commonplace for students to make these outlandish absolute statements without even knowing it, using words like any and all, or and every single and everyone. Well, we live in a world of gray areas. Keep that in mind. A conclusion should never make ridiculous proclamations that make you sound sort of naive. And finally, a conclusion should never just stop mid-thought. I can't think of anything else to write. I'm tired of writing this. I'm just going to stop writing and turn it in. You can't do that with a conclusion. You're completely, you're making all the work that you've done before that on this essay just worth so much less. So let's kind of go through some specific steps on how you can craft an impactful conclusion. First of all, begin with a phrase that sort of signals that you are wrapping up your discussion. Little adverbial phrases like ultimately, overall, in the end, or if you don't want to use an adverbial like initial modifier, use what I used or what the student used in the good sample. It's clear that, or you know, try not to use the word conclude, but you know, it's clear that, it's obvious that, something like that, that kind of signals that you're moving toward a conclusion. Yeah, it's clear that offering incentives for charitable acts appeals to a part of human nature we cannot ignore. So it's clear, implying that we can draw the conclusions that conclusion is part of the conclusion. Then, after you've kind of signaled that your discussion's coming to a close, transition toward drawing your final conclusions. Remember, everything in your essay has been building up to these final conclusions, so now is the time to really drop some knowledge on the reader. And here's how I do that in this example. But if true charity is selfless and does the most good, then incentivized giving must be something else. Despite its expediency, despite any amount of good it does, we cannot fool ourselves into thinking that we are truly being charitable, because that's not really the definition of charity. Those are the conclusions that I've drawn. Finally, you always want to leave your reader with some sort of profound thought. Send them off, send them away from your discussion with a profound final thought that will stick with them. And here are just 3 different very common things that you can do. Try posing a profound question to them at the end. Again, use your good sense on when to use rhetorical questions and using them wisely. Don't ask something that you didn't really address in your essay. Don't ask something that makes them feel that, you know, this was a waste of time. But posing a profound question can really send them off thinking about what you've just said. Another good one is to challenge some widely held or commonly held belief, or put a spin on some commonly held belief by changing it in some way, or changing the way we look at it. And then finally, this is my old standby, looking toward the future. If you absolutely don't know how to end a paper, this should be your first option. Look toward the future ramifications of what you've just said, like I did here. Failing to distinguish quid pro quo from altruism can inflate our perceptions of the amount of good we actually do, which in the end, meaning in the future, it helps little more than our ego. So I'm kind of suggesting some future cause and effect here. That's all I really have on conclusions. Remember, you've been building up to this your entire essay. Your conclusion should be the most impactful part of your entire discussion. Thank you for watching. Feel free to watch again, and I'll see you in class.